Hi, my name is Nick, and I love to play video games, and I'm from Chicago, Illinois. And one thing that I've noticed is that Chicago doesn't really get enough coverage for its contributions to video games in the industry, so I wanted to change that. This is Local Pixels, a podcast dedicated to celebrating those achievements. Now, this is the first episode, an interview with Steve Downs. Now, he was a radio DJ here in Chicago, but you might know him as the voice of Master Chief from the popular Halo series. I was lucky enough to get some time with Steve in January of 2021, and in here we talk about his time as a DJ in Chicago and the eventual landing of one of the most iconic voices in video games. If you're new here, consider subscribing for future content, and if you are a Chicago game developer, voice actor, or even gaming content creator, hit me up via email at sniktendo@gmail.com and let's chat. You can also find this video podcast on my YouTube channel, Super Nintendo, and audio format on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts under Local Pixels. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Master Chief himself, Steve Downs. Let's start with like the history of yourself too. Like, what got you into radio?
I think music, Nick, really, that was sort of my first passion. And, when I was growing up, I was in, formed rock bands when I was a kid and was in one sort of band or another from the time I was about 13 years old until I was graduated college, really. And I loved it. That was my passion. That was my love. But I wasn't good enough to make a living at it. So at some point when I was in college, I was trying to figure out, well, what can I do that is sort of music related, but I can actually, have a real job, because, you know, being a drummer in a rock band is not the most secure future. you know, if you've ever seen Spinal Tap, you know what I mean. But and I so radio, actually then my passion became, maybe I could be a record producer because I was really into, the mechanics of what goes into making music, and recording an album and how does that all work. So I went from just sort of being fascinated with the artist to being fascinated by the process. And that led me to, well, how can I get next to that kind of thing? And radio seemed like a good entree into that world. So when I was in school, uh, got a job working at the college radio station, and one thing led to another, and I got on the air and never got off. So I just fell in love with. It satisfied my desire to want to be close to the music, and also, you know, satisfied my ever enlarging ego and and the ham in me. And so yeah, I literally got on and never got off, and it became my life's work.
Yeah, I mean, because about the time that the 97, because for my audience and stuff, you were the voice of 97.1 FM, The Drive.
Right.
And so for people not really familiar with Chicago radio, there's not too many like rock stations and stuff. You had 90 the Loop, which is
Right.
like this, welcome to the Loop and everything. And 97.1 FM comes along and it's very soothing and everything and very educational and stuff. For someone my age, I'm 37. And so I was like just turning 16 when I started getting my driver's license and stuff. And of course, you got to listen to radio and stuff. So 97.1 FM was my, radio station and stuff. And you
Mhm.
learn so much about like classic rock music and everything. And you don't really get that through like a traditional radio station. You have like a disc jockey who's just like, well, here's the newest from Metallica and everything.
Right. Or the 10th caller, and giving away stuff. And yeah, I mean, really, the idea behind the drive when we first put it on the air in 2001 was, sort of go back to what rock radio used to be, back when it first started, when FM rock radio first started, which was in the late 60s and early 70s, when it was literally all about the music. And as you know, and anybody in Chicago would know, that was the Drive's initial sort of slogan, is that we're all about the music. So we really wanted to get it back to the beginning days of FM rock radio, and that's what it was. And the people who were on the air were people who were passionate about the music and not just wanted to be a radio star, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that definitely like helped seeded my enthusiasm for music and stuff. I'm not too big into music as a lot of people who know me know, but like just listening to that is just enough for me to appreciate it, at least, if I'm
Yeah, you
not
don't
just a
have
big
to be.
fan.
I mean, we weren't trying to take anybody to school or anything, but like, just to play, music that hadn't been played in quite a while back then, and then sort of fill in some of the holes of what that music was like when it was new. And we weren't trying to make it a scholarly thing, but we want, because at the end of the day you still want to have fun listening to the radio. But that was sort of our intent when we started out.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like you guys really like made some waves too. I mean, you have like rock and roll A to Z where you play your entire music catalog and stuff, and play
Yeah,
some real deep hits and
yeah,
everything too. But I wanted to ask you too, because usually they have like a March Madness, like Battle of the Bands
right,
type thing.
right.
So do you think like the Beach Boys deserved that top title over the Beatles? Because that usually comes down to it. It's usually
Is
the
that
Beatles
what it
versus.
was this year? I mean, I'm not in, as you might have guessed, I'm not in Chicago anymore.
Yeah, it looks a little different from Chicago, I would tell you. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure. But so is that who won this year? Was the Beach Boys or?
I'm not sure, but they've definitely won a handful of times.
Yeah,
Usually,
it's really, I mean, that's just sort of a fun thing to do. When we were doing it anyway. I mean, I've been gone from the Drive now for over 5 years, but when we were doing it, it was just kind of a fun thing to do, and it would always usually come down to Abbey Road and Dark Side of the Moon, or Let It Bleed or whatever. And then at the end of the day, it's sort of a you know a, just a personal preference kind of thing. And it was really just meant to be fun, and not to really be a serious. Music to me, and music appreciation is a subjective affair. And what is your favorite music might not be my favorite music, and vice versa. So to really get down to these, what's the greatest album of all time, who's the great, there's so many factors that go into that. I mean, it really at the end of the day is like, what floats your boat, who do you love, what gets you off, and that's really, that's the only thing that's important.
yeah. I mean, that's why I like the 97.1 FM the most, was because you guys didn't really gatekeep the music. It's like if you
Right.
guys want to come and chill and listen to some tunes and stuff, you're more than welcome to. And if you don't, like, that's your cool. That's
Right,
your
that's cool too.
yeah. So, over the history of like your radio, like what's your best story of radio then?
Well, yeah, again, there's, I don't know that one singular story comes to mind. I mean, I had a lot of great experiences. I was lucky when I first started, that the idea of what we used to call freeform radio was still in existence, where literally the disc jockey would just bring in his own records. You bring in your own records and you'd set them on the turntable, or set them on the desk there, and play whatever the hell you wanted to play. And there was nobody telling you that you had to play this or that and the other thing, because nobody knew what to play. you know so uh those were pretty hard days to beat, because I mean, quite honestly, I often say I would have done it for nothing. I practically did do it for nothing back in those days, but it was so much fun, and it was just such a joy to be able to share your passion for music, and literally have no controls. There was no boundaries. It changed a lot over the years, and really, in all honesty, became less and less fun. Uh, I enjoyed it right up until the day I retired, but it wasn't the same as it was in the beginning. Now, moving through those periods of times, when I started in Dayton, Ohio, which I went to University of Dayton, and that's where I started my radio career, and then left there and went to a little town in southeast Ohio, Athens, Ohio, and then went to Pittsburgh. That was sort of my first kind of big city job, and then from Pittsburgh to Los Angeles, and I was in Los Angeles for about 15 or 20 years on and off, and there were so many great experiences there. And the interesting thing about being on the radio in LA is that, and sometimes I would forget this, is that it's more than likely the artist who you are playing at any given time probably lives in the town that you're broadcasting in, and many times is listening to you. And so it's an experience unlike working in almost any other major city. I remember one time I was on the air and I was playing Heart, and it was Ann Wilson's birthday, and as we would often do, I played Crazy on You or whatever it was, and wished Ann Wilson a happy birthday. Well, the studio line rings, and I don't know how she got the hotline other than the fact that she's Ann Wilson, and I get on the phone and they say, "Steve, hi, this is Ann Wilson. I just wanted to thank you for wishing me a happy birthday. We're here in town recording an album, and thank you very much. That was very nice of you." Well, my initial feeling was I didn't believe it was her, because you could get crank calls like that all the time. I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. I fortunately I didn't say anything really asinine, but I hung up the phone only to find out that in fact it was Ann Wilson, and they were in town. They were recording an album, and she did call me. And I probably wasn't very friendly. I was probably, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Happy birthday. Hung up the phone. But that's the kind of stuff would happen all the time. And it made it for a very unique experience.
Any suggestions for somebody wanting to get into radio or podcasting or something like that?
Well, I think you probably know more about the podcasting angle than I do, but radio, I mean, it's such a different world now, from a technological standpoint, in terms of all the different venues one has to that are crying for your eyes or for your ears. And it's not like the old days when you had broadcast radio and broadcast television, and that was it. Now the sky's the limit. And the good news is just about anybody can create anything and find an audience for it. What I often think of as the bad news is it's hard getting paid to do it.
Yeah,
So
I can attest to that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the good news is everybody can do it. The bad news is you pretty much got to do it for free. So but the nice thing is, from a podcast standpoint, oftentimes you find these little niche podcasts, and if they happen to be something you're interested in, it's fascinating, and nowhere else could you find that kind of information, or that kind of expression, or to find other people who are interested in the same little bizarre thing that you're interested in. um, I would just wish that there was a way that people could pursue that kind of passion and be able to make a living at it. And we haven't figured that one. I mean, I guess if you get enough likes and your YouTube channel gets enough hits, you'll start making some money. But it is a very different kind of world out there. And from the radio standpoint, um, it's really hard. There's so very few radio stations all over the world, really, that are uh, not so corporatized that they've taken all the fun out of it. So it is, that's kind of a different. I think if you really have a desire to express yourself creatively, there's probably the internet is a better avenue than broadcast radio, because I just don't think there's much appetite for it out there.
Yeah, especially when you got Android Auto and everything like that, making it a lot easier to listen to Spotify and everything
Yeah,
like that too.
yeah,
So
and that makes it tough on the artist. Hey, it's great. I mean, I was out riding my bike today, and I had Spotify on. I'm listening to all kinds of cool stuff, but uh, it's not like I went out and bought the CD, and the artist is not being compensated fairly for it, so it makes it tough for them to make a living. I'm not, thinking everybody should be rich doing it, but it'd be nice if they could, didn't have to wait tables on the side as well.
Yeah, you should be able to at least live comfortably enough to
Yeah,
still pursue the
to have
passion.
it be your job, and wouldn't that be nice? And I don't know how we're going to get back to that in the future.
Yeah, I think that that's something definitely to think about. Hopefully in the future it starts to work that out. But as you're seeing too, it's like a lot of people they want the fame more than the money and stuff, so they're willing
Yeah.
to exchange that for for the exposure, so to
Well,
speak.
yeah. And isn't it weird? I mean, everybody can be famous, nothing to it. If you do something weird enough or something that will attract enough attention. I mean, you look at what's popular on TV, there are all these, game show type, masked singer and all these bizarre things that people, it's an outlet for them to get their 15 minutes worth of fame. But I find it weird. But you know what, Nick, I'm old, so that's the way it is. I
So
want it like the old days.
back in my day.
Back in my day, I tell you.
So let's talk a little bit about Halo,
Yeah.
because this is kind of interesting for me. Because one, I'll be honest, I did not put two and two together with you being the voice of Master Chief until like 2015 or something. You were talking with the radio hosts who replaced you when you left,
Yeah.
and you were like, yeah, I'm Master Chief and stuff. And like they were like, my kids, they were like, it's Master Chief, oh my god. And I was like, wait, what? And then like, yeah, they didn't put two together.
Yeah.
So
You weren't the only one, Nick.
so how do you get approached for something like that? Because I mean, Halo wasn't a thing until it became a thing.
Right, that's for sure. Well, it's kind of right place, right time, really. It's funny. My other career besides being on the air and radio was and is voiceover. Mostly commercial voiceover is what I did most of my career, and some narration and what they call industrial videos and that kind of thing. And so I did. I started that when I was in Los Angeles and continued it when I was in Chicago. Um, and bizarrely, the two careers never really intersected. You think there'd be a natural fit, voiceover and being a radio DJ. But amazingly, for me anyway, it didn't work out that way. And I can, I can't think of any significant uh, voiceover job that I ever had that I got as a result of being on the radio, except Halo, uh, which turned out to be the biggest job of my life, right? But Marty O'Donnell, who was the man who cast all the voices, also wrote and performed much of the music during the Bungie era of Halo. He lived in Chicago. Bungie was based in Chicago, and he had called me up through my agent to ask me to voice a character on a small little PC game that came out called Septerra Core. Very insignificant game, and I had a very insignificant part in it. However, it introduced me to Marty, and about a year later, he called again and asked me if I would be interested in being the voice of this new character for this new game they're doing. And I was like, yeah, what's it pay? So, and then I came down and saw Marty and we talked about it. And I became very excited about it because I'm a big science fiction fan and this was right up my alley and, superhero and all that kind of thing. But the point of the story is that the reason Marty even knew I existed was because he was a fan and listened to me on the radio. And that's when I was on the loop before the drive was in existence. And so it did directly relate to me getting the job to voice Master Chief through that series of events, and that's how that all started.
That's pretty cool. Like, so now, do you have any like background military experience or something like that to
No,
prepare you for Master Chief, or did
none
you just like
whatsoever.
jump right into it?
I avoided that like the plague. You know, when I was, yeah, no, I mean, when I was, 18, 19 years old, that's when they were still drafting people, and that's when Vietnam was happening. And yeah, I couldn't avoid that, hard enough. And, you know, I successfully did avoid it. There was a lot of guys who weren't as lucky and who gave a lot, and back, in some cases, the ultimate sacrifice. I was not one of them, no. But so no, I had no background there. But I, like I said, I did have a love of science fiction, and I loved the story of Halo, and I loved the Halo universe, and that's really what attracted me to it, and why I was able to sort of jump in with both feet.
Did you play any video games before that or something like that? You're like, okay, I'm in for it.
I played Pong.
Okay, Pong's good.
That
Pong's good.
was it. That was which was basically more or less the first video game, and I remember I remember getting it and playing. But yeah, and again and I've never made a secret of this. I didn't really that side of it never really attracted me. I had a good friend of mine when I lived out in LA who was a huge video game fanatic back in the late 70s, early 80s, and he bought, which was considered like extravagant at the time, his own Super Mario Brothers arcade. He had the actual arcade, the actual, I don't know what you call it, but the big box, and he had it sitting in his living room. That's how much he was into it. And I was never, I never, I'd go over and would hang out, and it didn't, for whatever reason, it just didn't appeal to me. It was strictly the story of Halo that appealed to me. And when Halo 2 came out, I remember thinking, I really should learn how to play this game. I mean, this is becoming a big thing, and I got to see what all the fuss is about. So I got the game, and I got an Xbox, and I brought it home, and I spent hours trying to get Master Chief out of the opening room that he was in. And I was like, how do you do this? I kept waiting for some little sign saying, this way out, you know, go here, nothing. So Master Chief spent about 2 hours bouncing off walls, literally, until I finally gave up and thought, well, I guess this isn't for me.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't play the video games and stuff, and that's okay. But how do you like when you're doing a voice session of this? How do you mentally and physically prepare for that? Is there like a process that you go through, or you just kind of come in and read the lines?
I think there's a process to it. Like I said, when we went to do Combat Evolved, Marty and I I think Joe Staten was involved as well, sat down and he basically just told me a story about this character and this world that he lived in and how he got along in that world and what may have been some of the things he might have been, how he dealt with the world, the sort of the hand that he was given. And so I sort of internalized all that as best I could. I mean, you really approach it like you would approach any acting role, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. You're pretending to be a character, and I was pretending to be this super soldier from another world, and who was fighting to save humanity. No small task. Not a
Did you?
big deal. Not a big deal, but you got to sort of ramp up for it. And so, and then as each succeeding game came out, of course, I had the benefit of the source material that started to develop around Halo once Combat Evolved became the success that it became. Then all of a sudden you started to get all these books and comic books and other source material to kind of fill in the blanks of Master Chief and Cortana and the whole world. And that was a tremendous help to me. Especially, I remember reading The Fall of Reach and like just filled in all this information that up till that point I didn't have, and it really helped in doing succeeding games after that, to do, because it's more than just reading the lines. Anytime anybody approaches a role, you can't just read the lines, or it will sound like you're just reading lines. you have to sort of get an understanding of who the person is that you're trying to become. And like I said, all the source material that was provided from various outlets was a great help to me.
So now, did you have actors in the same room as you, or did you have to kind of just hope?
No, you rarely have that, and there was one exception to that, but most of the time, most video game actors, voice actors, act alone. You're there with a director, maybe the writer, maybe a couple of other people, but rarely are you in the room with other actors. And I never was up until Halo 4, and that was the first time that I met Jen Taylor, who is the voice of Cortana. Up until then, Jen and I had never met, never talked, never had no relationship whatsoever. And I was invited out to Halo Fest in Seattle for the 10th anniversary of Combat Evolved, and Jen lives in Seattle, and Jen was invited as well. So we literally met at Halo Fest, and we discovered that we had an instant kinship, and because we had a shared experience that no one else could possibly understand. She was the only one that I could understand what I was thinking and feeling and going through, and of course, and I was the only one that could understand what she was going through, because we both, sort of got hitched to this tiger that took off, and we were just basically hanging on for dear life. And so to find a fellow traveler that they could go through this experience with you was a godsend. And then because of the story of Halo 4 being a much more involved story, especially between Cortana and Master Chief, fortunately, Brian, I'm gonna forget Brian's name now. Brian, I'm sorry, Gritch. Is it Gritch? Anyway, he and some of the other writers decided that it would be better, or they would at least like to try it, where the Jen and I would work together in the same room and record our lines together, which we did, and it was the best experience I've ever had. Actually doing the work of recording Master Chief. That was the highlight of the what, almost 20 years that we've been doing it, is that Jen and I get to work together in the same room, record the lines, the dialogue back and forth. And I thought that it helped certainly my role tremendously, and Jen has said that it helped hers too. And I hope that people, when they play Halo 4 and they get to the cinematics and the storyline, that they can hear that we brought a little more life to those characters than we had before that.
So would you say then that Halo 4 was your favorite Halo to
Halo
work on
4
then?
was my favorite. Yeah, absolutely, no question. And Jen would say the same thing. I've liked all of them, and it is a bit like asking who your favorite child is. But Halo 4, because of for a lot of reasons. First of all, going into Halo 4, there was a very good chance I wasn't going to be voicing Master Chief. That was the first one with 343 at the helm, and not Bungie, and they were not under any obligation to continue using the same people. And they made a lot of changes, in who was working on the game, and I could have easily have been one of them, and I wasn't. And so there's that. And then there was the actual storyline was just so much more meaty, and I so enjoyed doing it, and enjoyed working with Jen, and she brought so much to the party there that it just made the experience a very unique and special one for me.
Yeah, I mean, so that is kind of interesting. So do you think that with all the 20 years of Halo, like that's amazing too.
Yeah.
Do you think like that there was any other struggles and stuff that you had, playing this character? Because I mean, you say that you never played the games, but it sounds to me that you are just as invested as any other gamer, who would be and stuff. You are Master Chief pretty much. So I mean, do you have any like, stories that you had struggles that you faced during the production? Was there any type of like hiccups or something like that that would have?
Well, the biggest one, and I sort of alluded to it, was going into Halo 4. They had already decided there was going to be a different voice for Master Chief and a different voice for Katana. It was not something they were thinking about. It was a done deal. Um, and then as they got closer to the end of production, they started to get pushback. You know, they beta test, you know, the games. All companies do, and they started to get pushback on that the voice actors weren't the same people that people had come to know, and they didn't like it. And so then they came to me and to Jen, and then you know, wanted to take another look at it, and basically wanted to see, because Master Chief was going to be emoting a lot more than he had in 1, 2, and 3, and Reach. Um, so I mean, he didn't do much in Reach, but uh, you know, it was gonna be a different approach. And was I up for it? You know, was I up to the task? And I knew that. They knew it. Neither one of us talked about it, but I knew what was at stake. So here I am, doing what they call the technical test uh, for a character that I had been living with for almost 10 years at that point. And I was basically auditioning for the role again. And by the way, had never auditioned for Master Chief. When Marty first contacted me, we didn't audition. He just said, "You're the guy." So
And you're just like, okay, fine. Like,
and
yeah.
I was okay, fine. So 10 years after that fact, I was auditioning for the role. And fortunately, you know, I got it. I mean, it was not a sure thing. I knew it wasn't a sure thing, and it was a scary moment, because you know, I certainly didn't want to, especially just when, you know, the role was going to be a little more substantial than me just yelling Cortana every 5 minutes. You know, we were going to have some actual conversation and dialogue. I really wanted to be a part of that, and it all worked out.
So do you think that there's any plans to branch out Master Chief in the future? Like, is there
Mm.
a movie or something
Beyond
like
Halo?
that? Yeah,
Oh,
like,
well, there is. No, there's definitely a movie. Showtime is well into production of a Halo series that I don't know when it's going to be out. I think they're hoping sometime in 2021, but that could, you know, everything's been pushed back. As you know, Halo Infinite
yeah.
was supposed to be out 2 months ago, and now we're looking at the fall of this year. So the other thing is, I'm not involved in the Showtime series.
Okay.
There's another Pablo Schreiber is going to be the embodiment of Master Chief, both in voice and in physical representation. Um, so yeah, I'm not involved in that at all. But it's I'm very excited about what they're going to be doing, and certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. Now, a quick little fun question though: who do you think would win in a fight? Would you think Master Chief, voiced by you, or the Mandalorian, voiced by Pedro Pascal? Because you guys
Oh,
both have like a
yeah.
very iconic voice, and it's, you know, obviously as we've been talking, it's not a stretch for you to be Master Chief. So
Well, of course, my money's on the Chief always. You know, I think he's a pretty tough hombre incited, and you know, not that the Mandalorian isn't, but you know, if you're going to be, you know, when the chips are down, I would never bet against the Chief, no matter who his opponent.
so now during the production, did you get any, because you said you had to go out and buy your own Xbox? They didn't give you,
Yeah,
you know, a special Halo Xbox
no,
or
they
anything
didn't.
like that? You
I
had to
bought
go
my
buy
own.
your own?
In fact, I think I bought a used one. I don't even think it was new. Uh, you know, that has changed, you know, since then, I will say, uh, you know, because I'm not a gamer, I don't really have a big desire to have one.
Yeah,
You know,
that
you
makes
kind of
sense.
have to use it, and why waste it on me, especially since they appear to be in short supply, you know,
Yeah,
especially
like,
the new ones.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Do you have any type of Halo merchandise or anything like
Oh, I
that?
got it. Yeah, no, I got it. If we were in my office, I got a ton of little trinkets and tchotchkes and a lot of stuff. A lot, excuse me, a lot. Not only stuff that 343 has given me, but various manufacturers of Halo merchandise, and then some of the stuff that is really treasured is stuff you get from fans who have
Yeah.
made. I no longer have it because he didn't survive. A Somebody had made a Master Chief. I think he was about this high, and it was made entirely out of duct tape, and all the colors were correct. The green suit, the gold visor, the helmet. It was all correct, but it was all done by duct tape, start to finish. And it was the most fascinating thing. And I had it for years and years, but after a while, duct tape tends to,
It gets mushy, yeah.
yeah. And so poor Chief just kind of, and he looked a little pathetic towards the end, and I had to put him out of his misery. I think my most prized possession, I should have brought it out here before we started, is my Master Chief Pez dispenser,
You
which
can
is
send
just,
me a picture of them if you
I'll
want.
send you a picture of my Pez dispenser. He's absolutely awesome.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, do you get recognized in public for your voice?
Usually only if I'm at a convention. It's first of all, I'm a voice actor, and I don't walk around looking like Master Chief, so it rarely happens, in the grocery store. But if I'm at a convention, now you're among true fans, who have looked you up and know what you look like, and all that kind of, and they know that you're there maybe, and so I'll run into a lot of people at sort of video game conventions or anime conventions that will recognize me.
What's your favorite part about conventions?
Well, you know, I suppose we have to speak of them in the past tense because who
Yeah,
knows if
right.
they're going to be back. But um, meeting the fans, without question. And again, that's helped me in actually performing the role. Is I got a real appreciation for how passionate people are about the character and how much he means to them on a very, very personal level. And you can't help but be affected by that, and you know kind of bring that to the role the next time you're going to work on Master Chief. So that's been a great experience, and knowing that that character has gotten some people through some tough times. I've heard a lot of stories like that. Heard a lot of stories from servicemen who have been over in Iraq or Afghanistan, and it might seem counterintuitive that in their downtime they'd want to get involved in an intergalactic war, but that's what they would do, just to blow off steam and whatever, and that the game and the character meant a lot to them, and they could relate to it in a way that maybe the average person couldn't. So those are very important moments, and ones that I treasure.
So now, like when you like, let's go a little bit back. Like when you signed on to do Master Chief and Halo and stuff, did you, when you're reading the source material, did you think that the game would be as big of a franchise as it is now, or did you just
No
think it was
idea.
just a one-off game?
Oh, I thought it was just a one-off game. In fact, after I did it, the thing about voice acting is when you're voicing a commercials, for example. I just did one that you may have seen for Taco Bell, that Master Chief was in recently, and uh, when you do commercials, the way you know that they're successful, first of all, you might see them on TV all the time, but the way you really know is when you start getting checks in the mail. You start getting residual checks, and they get bigger and bigger and whatever. That's a then that you got onto something. Well, there are no residuals in video games, so once you do the job, they pay you, and that's it. So unless you're involved in the world, um, you don't know. You don't know what, whether, and I wasn't involved in the world, so I had no idea until I went down to visit some friends. I was with a girlfriend at the time, and we visited somebody here in Florida, her brother, and the kids were playing Halo, and I recognized the game, and I said, I think I voiced a character in that game, and they asked me who it was, and I couldn't remember the name of the character. And I said, I can't remember his name, but I think he was kind of the main guy in the game. And they said Master Chief. I was, yeah, it was Master Chief. Well, 20 minutes later, there's 35 kids outside this guy's door carrying their Xboxes or their copies of the game, wanting it signed. And that was the first time I had any idea that the game had become, the huge success that it became.
Yeah, I imagine that. Yeah, like if you're a voice actor or something and you just do the job, yeah, it's kind of hard to see like if it becomes like a success until it kind of reaches around and like hits you in the face.
That's exactly what happened. They reached around and boom.
So you're like, oh hey, I did that.
Yeah,
So
I did that. Yeah.
that's really cool. So now what is, I guess I what is the future of Master Chief? I mean, like I
Mm.
guess you'll do it as much as they'll let you, right?
Well, I'll tell you, the future is infinite. Uh, you get that, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. And we're actually still working on it. So, that's the immediate future is the next game, which God willing will be out before the end of the year. And then beyond that, I'm not really at liberty to say. It's part that I'm not at liberty to say, and it's part that I don't know. But we're not done. I guess is the most succinct answer I can give you. And yes, as long as I still enjoy it, I'll keep doing it, and I'm still enjoying it. I've probably had more fun doing Infinite this year, even given some of the somewhat extraordinary hurdles we've had to go jump over because of COVID. Uh, it has been one of the best experiences that I've had, um, uh, uh, recording Master Chief for Halo. So I'm very, very excited about what's about to happen. And sorry that it's late, but it is a better late than never thing, and you want to get it right. And I think by the time this thing finally hits the streets, it's going to be awesome. And then you know maybe the future then will become a little clearer.
Yeah,
Put
I
it that
mean, and I think that that's a really good way to look at it. I mean, I think fans were disappointed that
Sure.
it wasn't
Of course they were.
going to be a launch title and stuff. But I think given the reception that Cyberpunk 2077 has had with
Oh
it
wow,
coming
yeah,
out and stuff,
yeah.
I'm glad that they pushed it back.
Yeah, and
It's
that could have happened. It's I think people. I mean, I'm not blaming. First of all, my role is very narrow. I voice the character. I'm not involved in the visual production of it, as you see, and the gaming and all the intricacies that go into the making of a video game. I don't know if people really appreciate how complicated that whole thing is. I mean, I've gone to the offices and I've seen some of the guys at work, and what happens in creating one of these games, and it is monumental. And now to throw in a pandemic in the middle of it, and have to continue with all the restrictions and all the separation and all that had to happen. um, it's no wonder the thing was delayed. Quite frankly, I think it's a miracle it's going to come out this year. So, you know, you want it to be right. You don't want it to be in a hurry. And yes, we've had some examples of things that maybe weren't quite ready. And I appreciate the one thing about working with these people, and all the people at 343, that has been makes my job, my little part of it, so much more fun, is that they are so interested in it and so committed to it beyond just doing your job. It's they're as passionate about it as the most rabid fan, and that's the way you want it. That's who you want making your video games, is somebody who digs it just as much, if not more, than you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's going to be like one of the things that really makes it a good game. I know that some people have, felt that, the franchise is kind of like taking a little dip and stuff. So hopefully, this will be the one where like people are like, all right, it's back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a heavy lift, when you've been carrying on a story for 20 some years, and gone through two different owners, if you will, and two different visions, over, at least two different visions over a 20-year period. Um, it's not easy, and and then to please everybody.
Yeah, right.
That, of course, is impossible. But I think, if you have people who are involved in it, who are passionate about it, and who care on that level, um, good things will happen.
So now you're Master Chief. Now, how do you like? Can you voice something else too? You voice some of the Adventure cartoon, right?
Oh, I did the voice for the Disney animated series, The Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Hero. I did Star-Lord.
Okay.
That was in for a couple episodes, I think. Uh, but that was it. I don't. There's no other video. If I had a nickel for every time I auditioned for a Star Wars video game, I'd have a Rolls Royce in the driveway. But I just never get. But that's the sort of the blessing and the curse of voicing such an iconic character is you become typecast. And trust me, I'm not complaining. you know, if you're gonna hitch your wagon to one character, let it be Master Chief. That's all I have to say on that subject. Um, but yeah, I don't do a lot of, and quite honestly, not all that interested in doing a lot of other video games. If something came along that it was right, and that I was right for it, certainly I'd entertain it. But I'm pretty happy with the Chief.
So what do you do in between projects then? Like what's your lifestyle outside of Halo?
You mean this?
Yeah, right. It's not a
uh,
green screen, folks. That
it's
is
no,
is
it's real. I play an obscene amount of golf, and my wife and I like to travel a little bit, although that's been severely restricted with COVID. Um, I have a daughter and grandkids out in Colorado that we like to visit, and kind of family oriented stuff. I mean, I like to swim, I like to work out, these kinds of things, but um, you know, yeah, that's you know, I like not working. I like not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do a radio show every day. I like that a lot.
that would be my ideal
That,
as well.
that did get old.
Not
I
getting up
mean,
that early.
yeah, you could relate. I mean, I lived in out by O'Hare Airport. I lived in Park Ridge, and so the show started at 5:15 in the morning, and I was up and out the door at 4. And on those January days, man, driving down the Kennedy, and slipping all over the place, and then I'd park the car, 2 blocks away from the Hancock building, and walk to the Hancock when it's 10 below zero. And I gotta say, I don't really miss it. I don't miss it at all.
So I see that you're on Cameo
Yes.
now. What kind of like intrigued you to get into that?
Well, there's another funny story. So Cameo, as for those of you who don't know, is a service where you can get various celebrities of one stripe or another to record personal, brief, like 30-second or so messages for you, birthdays, anniversaries, pep talks, whatever it might be. And they're based out of Chicago too, as a matter of fact. And a couple of years ago, I'd heard about them, and I thought, this I might be kind of fun to do, and there might be a market for it, for Master Chief doing that kind of stuff. So I reached out to him and said, I'm interested. Crickets, nothing. I didn't hear a thing. I was like, okay, got you loud and clear. And then a year later, literally a year later, somebody from Cameo contacted me somehow. I don't even know how they got my email, and introduced themselves and said, would you be interested in cameos? I said, well, if you check your records from a year ago. Anyway, so we started, and it's been a huge success, and it's a lot of fun. You get to do, you know, well, I mean, I don't really meet people because they send their request in, I record it, send it back to them. Uh, but it's a, you get again, and if I get requests from all over the world. And on a very positive note, last year we devoted a whole month of cameos to a charity called Project Cure, which is an organization that procures and distributes PPEs and ventilators and that kind of thing. They have been doing this for years, mainly for hospitals all over the world who didn't have access to getting ventilators or whatever. And obviously, with the pandemic, they refocused their efforts and included this country as well. The point of the story is we raised almost $40,000 in a month,
Oh, wow.
which translates literally into millions of face masks and thousands of ventilators and equipment like that. So I was very proud of sort of the Halo fan base to step up like that, and we're going to do something like that again next month. All the details haven't been buttoned up yet. I can't really get into the specifics of it. But watch my my Twitter account and my Facebook account and Cameo, because we're going to have some information on another opportunity, not only for you to get a cameo from the voice of Master Chief, but also have your money donated to what I think will be a very worthwhile and appropriate cause. So stay tuned for that.
What's your most interesting cameo? I guess I would
Mm.
curious.
I've done a few marriage proposals. I've done a few marriage proposals, and I've done a few. Guess what? You're having a baby. I've done a couple of those.
Pretty
I
good.
wonder how those went down.
Yeah, right, Master Chief. What
yeah.
are you saying here?
Yeah, this is Spartan 117. Your girlfriend's pregnant.
And
Deal
Master
with it.
Chief's the father.
Yeah,
like,
that's
what?
right. Yeah,
Come
yeah.
on, Master Chief.
No, never said that. Never said that. But yeah, and I've done a few marriage proposals, which, to the best of my knowledge, they were accepted. So I think that went well. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, like just to see that you're branching out and having fun with it, and I think that's the best way to keep it fresh.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah,
know,
and it does. And I'll be going back in again this month to do some more work on Infinite. So it sort of keeps me in the headspace, and I'm very excited about that, and can't wait for y'all to see it.
yeah, I'm excited too. I'm not the biggest Halo fan, but I really do enjoy like playing it. Like my best memory of like playing Halo was we would get like 8 or 4 Xboxes together, and we
Mm,
would network them all together and stuff, and you'd have like one big LAN party where it was like 4 of us was on 2 TVs, and
wow.
then on the other side, the other team was on the other side of the room and stuff, and so we would play together and stuff, and having those big LAN parties that unfortunately we can't do as much anymore. But I mean,
Yeah.
that was like the highlight of like my
Yeah.
early gaming years and stuff, where you just like you hang out with like all these people that you've never met before, and you're like, hey, you
Yeah.
want to play Halo? It's like, all right, sure.
A great
So
icebreaker.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
um Steve, I really appreciate you coming on to talk with me about Halo and everything else. It was definitely a really cool experience for me.
No, I
um
enjoyed it, Nick. It was a lot of fun, and always great to talk to a fellow Chicagoan. Sorry about the Bears, but as
yeah,
we say in Chicago often, there's always next year.
that's the story of our lives,
It
right?
is.
Thanks so much to Steve Downs for taking the time out of his day to speak with me. If you liked this episode, please like the video, rate it if you're listening on a podcast platform, and share it with anyone who might find it interesting. If you are a Chicago video game contributor and would like to talk about your project with me, let's get in touch. Email me at snicktendo@gmail.com. That's SNICKTENDO@gmail.com with details of your project. Thanks again for listening to Local Pixels, and we'll see you in the next episode.